affected by, the depreciation of the cedi. So we can take up and say, yes, indeed, the bank, the central bank has lost, this 60.8 billion as a result of its operations. Its operations because it has to take on assets and liabilities. When they give out a loan to the government, it's a form of asset they are holding. If a government is doing debt restructuring, and it turns up that the Bank of Ghana, which is, the lender of last resort, or let me also put it more or less as an entity that is supposed to receive the shocks that a country is facing, then obviously you're going to, have that situation for which that debt may have to be restructured. But the question that we are asking is that the level of debt that was restructured, has it been communicated, and what terms they went in with the government? I've never seen any document of that sort. So I think more information will help us to see whether indeed the Bank of Ghana's, loss is mainly as a result of the debt exchange that we're talking about. But from where I sit, I think there are some operational losses that they've incurred apart from a debt exchange. That builds up into a net equity of that negative 60.8 billion.
Is that to say that its rejection of the allegations of recklessness made by the opposition in this context holds some weight? I mean, to a large extent, it's saying that it hasn't gone into any fiscal overrun. And under which criteria would you say we can use to assess the performance of the central bank, especially when its objective is to ensure that inflation targets are met rightly?
Yeah, so clearly, if you want to assess a central bank and its effectiveness, you may have to look at the monetary channels of operations, because we have targets that is given to the central bank through the monetary policy. And in other jurisdictions, they may use employment that has been created as part of the target. So if Bank of Ghana says, okay, I came to the rescue of the economy, how many companies have been resuscitated? How many companies have, picked up their operations? As, interest rates come down to a level where businesses can easily have access to funds. If a central bank wants to re-energize an economy, there are two channels they can use. But first, the fiscal channel, i.e., by lending to the government or by printing money and giving it to the government. It's I don't know how to put it, but it's a dangerous route. That if you don't care and print money and you give it to the government, those monies may end up in sectors that are inefficient, in sectors that are not necessarily building up into the economy, probably because of political allocations of the monies that you give. But then on the other hand, if you are to use the route of the monetary policy channel, where you inject the monies into the economy through the banking consortium, then obviously you expect that. Hello, are you listening to me, please?
Carry on, Prof.
Yes. So then you expect that through the corridors of the bank, funds will be allocated efficiently, because the banks have the expertise to know exactly, where to send money to be active in an economy. So that is why usually there's a limit to how much the central bank can lend to the government. And the cap was around 5% of, expected revenue, or in some cases, previous year's revenue. There's a reason for that. And all the activities will tend to be through the monetary channel. So if you want me to assess the central bank, we have to ask ourselves, with all the possible attempts that they use in rescuing the economy, what impact has it made on inflation? What impact has it made on possible employment that we created? Or what impact has it made on business revival?
Prof, talking about impact, the IMF in its response, if you recall, as I did indicate, well, they did trying to shed light on the issues, actually expressed some confidence that the central bank's income is anticipated to be sufficient for covering these operational costs. Do you foresee same?
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
I'm saying that you spoke about impact, and I'm saying that with your concerns on its impact, the IMF, in shedding light on what the situation really is, expressed some form of confidence that the central bank's income is anticipated to be sufficient for covering operational costs related to monetary policy, like you mentioned.
Well, the central bank income is not what we look at to measure the performance. Central bank is there to handle the monetary policy operations of the country. And then we're looking at the fiscal side being handled by the government, putting them together to seek the welfare of the people. That is how it is. And we are asking ourselves, through the possible, rescues, how is the welfare of the people? Are they going to the market with a surety that if they receive their salary today, the items they bought, would they be able to buy the same items going forward without necessarily seeing a price increase? Those are the things we may have to look at. Because if the central bank income is doing well, and then, at the end of the day, improves and they are doing well, and it's not building up into the welfare of the citizenry, then I don't think we're looking at economic management. So there are benchmarks, and that is why inflation is one of the key targets as far as the central banks act is concerned. And then also, to some extent, we can look at it from the employment creation perspective as a main target. But it's unfortunate we don't have real-time data on the number of people who have been engaged in the economy at each point in time. And I think that should be the next level of, data build-up for the country. So from what I see, I think, the central bank made an attempt to secure, or let's say to rescue the economy. But are we feeling the impact of their decision?
Indirectly, is that saying that the Bank of Ghana swayed away from its macroeconomic objective of low and steady inflation?
It did. The Bank of Ghana went astray in the sense that you have, the Bank of Ghana knows very well, technically, they're not supposed to lend to the central government up to a certain tune. But they went ahead to do that, and they know the economic repercussions for doing it. Because at the end of the day, you end up pushing money into the economy, but the money may not function. Because the government's objective may be different from the business objective if you were to channel the money through the corridors of the bank. And so that is where the problem is.
Now, Professor, independence is very important here. And would you say that if the government was fully in control of monetary policy instead of an independent central bank, we wouldn't have gotten ourselves in this mess in the first place?
Well, independence, we may have to look at it in two ways. The first one is governance independence, which that one per our constitution and the structures of our financial system has been compromised already. Because it's the government that appoints the governor of the central bank, and to some extent, the deputies of the central bank. In some cases, it goes into directorship. It becomes political. So for that aspect, it has been compromised. And if you look at the board of the central bank, government has a rep there, Ministry of Finance and all those, and they are all more or less, government, pseudo-government related, reps. But we call something operational autonomy. And operational autonomy is the straw we were holding up to keep the Bank of Ghana as an independent entity without interference of the central government or without operating to suit the central government or to do the bidding of the central government. Let me put it that way. But then, what we are saying here is that operational autonomy that we're holding up to seems to be compromised in the current, Bank of Ghana's structures, because of the way and manner money was printed and was used to finance, the budget deficit of the country. And there's a reason why that law existed, which limits the quantums of money that the central bank can channel through the corridors of government.
And your words were the independence and autonomy was compromised. Is that to say that public trust in financial institutions, which is very crucial for maintaining stability, is lost? Do you think the public have lost total trust in the central bank?
Yeah, somebody will ask the kind of possible impact that the 60 billion loss will have on the economy. Let's not take the reputational exposure for granted, because you may talk about all the financial losses, the possible investment losses that people may, but what we talk about is reputation. You see, the central bank stands for a pillar, which is behind all the banks, in every country. So, if I'm sitting here as an investor and I'm looking at, if I lend money to Bank A and Bank A is in trouble, at least for the last resort, the central bank is supposed to come to my rescue. But this is a central bank that is more or less announcing, a loss. And the loss is not just a mere loss. It's a deep loss. That loss is about 13% of our GDP. So you ask yourself, how would such a bank, a central bank comes to my rescue in case a bank should falter? Or that's a regulation, but the regulations, that's how it's supposed to be. So that confidence will go.
Final words, Prof. How do we rebuild this trust? How does the bank take steps in rebuilding the trust?
Of course, building a trust comes over time. You won't take one day to roll out a policy and say you are you are going to build up trust. You must be transparent. One of them, consistent transparency. So now that you made a lot and you reported to us, the next year, whatever comes on your balance sheet, let the public know. And I foresee an improvement on the balance sheet of the central bank going forward. So now, from now on, if you want, somebody to trust you, you have to be open enough. The central bank must be open. They seem too opaque in their dealings. Because as I sit here, I don't even know when the central bank throws out adverts for recruitment. Nobody knows. Or have you seen one before? Let me ask you.
I believe it's on the website. There's a place where you are able to see career options that have vacant slots.
So is it only on the website that they're supposed to make advert, or an act? There's an act that confines their advert onto their website. So effectively, they must come out and be open enough. And when they turn up to people, I think the trust will come over time.
Very well. Thank you so much, Professor Lord Mensah, and all the best. Thank you for taking time off your busy schedules to join us this morning on the forum. You just heard an Associate Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah. I have two wonderful ladies in studio, so we're bringing the conversation away from the phone to in studio, and I want to introduce them. We have the Deputy Minister of information in studio. We also have the managing legal practitioner at GOB Law Consult, and Madam Gloria Ofori Bwedu, and we have Fatima Abubakar in our studios this morning. Good morning, madams.
Good morning.
And good to have you this morning joining us for our conversation on the forum. We'll have the gentlemen join us later as we continue. I don't know if you have followed what the submissions and remarks from Professor Lord Mensah, and his major points have been that the lack of transparency from the central bank. Let me come to you, and Madam Gloria, let me begin with you. Would you say that they are in this mess as a result of being opaque and being clandestine in their activities? Madam Gloria.
If I remember, I believe that there's someone from Uganda representing the World Bank who is acting, or who is performing a supervisory role physically at the bank. We have that information,
yes,
don't we? So, and then we've also seen the Bank of Ghana's response. So I guess that at the end of the day, it's a matter of looking at both sides. What the parliamentary committee indicated, the response from the Bank of Ghana, and the fact that there's a supervisor sitting physically at the premises.
All right, let me come to you. Let me come. I'll come back to you, madam. But you're welcome, Fatima, and good to have you here. And I will throw a lot of the government-related questions to you because you are in a place of office. You are a public official. Now, the accusation of the Bank of Ghana printing money without parliamentary approval has been a significant point of contention. Can you clarify the government position on this matter? And if you could let us in on some evidence, especially when the Bank of Ghana has responded to all the allegations raised by the minority but has refused to respond to the allegations of printing money in 2021 and 2022.
Okay, first of all, let me say good morning to you and to my co-panelists and your cherished listeners. I believe this conversation has come up primarily because of the annual report which was published by the Bank of Ghana itself, voluntarily, or in line with some legal requirements. That being said, we should recognize that such publications in themselves are a layer of transparency and accountability, just so that the public will get to know what is happening at the bank. So for them to publish the annual reports, unless they were coerced to publish, but if for them to publish the annual report and then subsequently come up with responses, and for us to throw all that aside and say they were not transparent, I think it is not a fair comment. That being said, the Bank of Ghana has not issued only one statement. Since the press conference by the minority leader, so far they have issued 2 statements, and I believe it's a continuous process. As and when some issues become more pronounced or dominant in the public discourse, they come to respond to it. So I am not surprised if we wake up tomorrow and they have a specific response addressing this issue about printing money. That being said, we have to look at the BOG conversation in a particular context. The Bank of Ghana is not a commercial bank. The primary responsibility of the bank has to do with monetary policy and to ensure that we have stability in terms of our currency, inflation, and some other key economic indicators, which they have delivered. And ordinarily, most economists and people who understand how monetary policy work would have a template as to how they should operate, the threshold of loan that they can give to government, which was mentioned as 5%, and so on and so forth. But there are times that even in contract law, we have force majeures. And such instance is when we had the COVID pandemic. Not just Ghana. Most central banks around the world recorded losses because of lack of predictability. Even, and let me throw more light on some specific examples and then show cause for why that was the case. For instance, in Australia, Just a moment, please. Okay, so a lot of banks. Let me give you an example. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, recorded a loss of 37 billion Australian dollars in their books. The UK government faced 150 billion pounds bill to cover on the Bank of England losses. The Swiss National Bank, they recorded a preliminary loss of 32 billion francs for 2022, and that was just in January. So there may be additional losses that may be reported. And also in September, the Central Bank of the Netherlands also reported some 9 billion euros losses. The U.S. Federal Reserve, they said they were no longer able to remit weekly billion-dollar transfers to the U.S. Treasury. I'm giving you these examples because of a key part of the conversation that we are missing. You know, of course, government was borrowing. If the economy was growing at the projected rate, which we have the average growth rate of 7% between the year 2017 to 2019, the level of accumulation would have reduced, meaning you are borrowing, but your economy is also growing, and your debt to GDP will be a bit less.
But we haven't seen that yet.
No, I'm coming to that.
Very well.
But when we have a situation where there is a sudden dip in growth, where we were not able to grow for up to even 1% in the year 2020, and the subsequent low showing that we have seen on our books, I think apart from the first quarter of 2023, where we've seen a quarterly growth rate of about 4.2%, the growth rate post-pandemic has generally been low, and that is a fact. That also means all the expectations and targets that we had raised to be able to settle debts are no longer available or at government's disposal. What it means is that the Bank of Ghana, which is like the lender of last resort and also the regulator of the monetary space, would have to absorb some of those losses. And that is what happened when we did the DDEP. When we did the DDEP, let me give you some specific examples. As reported by the Bank of Ghana, they had to sustain some losses, restructuring their marketable securities to the tune of 16.1 billion, and also non-marketable securities to the tune of about 64 billion. That being said, it caused the BOG to have a haircut of about 32 billion Ghana cedis on their books. And the debt restructuring was occasioned by the IMF program we have entered, just so that we get sustainability, we get stability. So let me give you another example that will explain the situation to the layperson. For instance, if you had projected that in January of 2022, inflation was going to be 8%, and in December of 2022, inflation has risen to 54.1%. Someone has to take care of the gap and make sure they have some semblance of stability. And that is exactly what the Bank of Ghana did. And sometimes when we have excess liquidity in the system or lack of liquidity in the system, they are pushed to issue some securities just so that they are able to stabilize the situation. So they are not commercial banks where they are measured necessarily by how much profits you have made, how much losses you have made, because sometimes when the situation is volatile, they would have to carry some of the national burden so that we get the stability. To start with, as shown on the IMF website, these losses on the BOG's book is not a reflection of their ability to satisfy their immediate obligations. Because if you look at some of the losses, as I mentioned earlier, I was telling you that when it comes to their non-marketable securities, some of them date way back up to 2016. And if you look at the non-marketable securities from 2016, which had to be restructured, they are in excess of 12 billion Ghana cedis. So they were just sitting on their books.
Very well.
But they have used this DDEP opportunity to just clean everything and have a clean slate as they seek to rebuild.
I'll stay a bit longer on you, Fatima. But then again, the Bank of Ghana's, it ought to know that a mere reference to government intention to engage in DDEP, like you rightly mentioned, as communicated by the finance minister in even his 2023 budget statement to Parliament, does not and cannot justify the bank's breach of Section 53 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016. Now, for emphasis, the mere declaration, this is what it says, and I quote, a mere declaration of intent to Parliament by the government to engage in debt restructuring does not amount to a resolution or approval by Parliament for BOG to write off public funds. Neither does the accounting standard referred to by the Bank of Ghana permit the writing off of public funds without parliamentary approval. Again, on record, that no point has a finance minister presented a report to Parliament informing the House of the attainment of the 5% borrowing threshold or the setting of a new limit of government borrowing as required by Section 30 of the Bank of Ghana Act. That is my first argument. It's not justification enough. Again, listening to the associate professor of finance, I threw a question to him and I asked him that has the Bank of Ghana not swayed away from its macroeconomic objective of low and steady inflation? You rightly mentioned the inflation figures, but then the bank, as we know, has moved away from the central bank's target band of 6% to 10% to 43.1% in July 2023. So in as much as it was trying to play the hero, go with the hero complex, try to be a savior in the situation, it has breached certain acts, it has breached certain laws. What would be your defense in this regard?
When you talk about the breaches, I believe it's a question of law, which would require a lot more interrogation of the necessary legislation.
But do you agree that it has breached?
Because no, I don't want to take a position on that yet, because I listened to your interview with Honorable Sheila Battles, who stated that there had been some engagements in Parliament and it was not as to whether the minority had any objections to some position taken by the Bank of Ghana was not an issue. I don't know the nature of engagement. If they constitute an approval, legitimately so-called. So, and I am not in Parliament.
Right. So
until I'm privy to some of the engagements and the approvals and documents and the standing orders of Parliament, which point to the fact that engagement with a committee properly so constituted is as legitimate as engaging the House as a whole. I am here to look at the specific provisions and also listen to the majority side of Parliament in subsequent conversations, because this is a developing story, to see whether what the minority have stated constitute a breach of the Public Financial Management Act.
Yeah, sure. We have two lawyers in studio. We have
I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, yes, very well. Sure. Pardon me. And yes, so we have lawyer Jantwa in studio, who is also a member of the CPP, and Madam Gloria Buedu. So, Madam, the conversation now has come to the breach of the Public Financial Management Act, and like I rightly quoted, there has been the defense of the minority is it didn't seek the right approval. And again, I want to use the defense of Fatima by saying that, well, we should expect subsequent statements from the Bank of Ghana. It has released 2 statements so far to back its claims and to argue in favor of what it has done behind the scenes. And so we are expecting some form of explanations, further explanations to the printing of money and whether indeed some parliamentary approval it was made. We don't have anyone in studio here who is a member of Parliament. But throwing a question to you, Madam, as someone who has observed the legal scene for a while, clearly breaching these acts has some repercussions and brings to fore that in as much as you are trying to save a situation, you didn't follow right and due protocols.
Well, my comments about breaching the act and following right protocols will not come up at this time because I don't know the other perspective. But then listening to reading the response of the Bank of Ghana, it ties in with my perspective that between February of 2022 to about September of 2022, the cedi was galloping. The cedi went mad and was galloping. Beyond control. Incidentally, most of our inputs when it comes to manufacturing in Ghana are imported. And so with the cedi galloping, there was some form of uncontrollable pricing of goods and services, including spare parts, including even food, because if you are buying Milo or Cerelac on the market, there's some form of imported components. Even with foodstuffs, which were, coming from our villages and rural areas, it had an impact on it because the middlemen have to come by vehicles, by transport. The issue of fuel was, increasing or decreasing per day, per every 24 hours. So I believe that it caused a lot of financial trauma to members of the society. Now, when I read the Bank of Ghana's response, one of the responses, I've read one, I thought it was interesting because the same central bank was also talking about the fact that most of their vehicles, the spare parts are imported.
Yeah, those are the operational costs.
And so, because of the fluctuations in the exchange rate, it's affected it. And then they went on to talk about even fuel for monitoring and distribution of currency was also affected. So it's interesting that I, as a member of the public or a citizen, I'm looking at the fluctuations and how it's affected food pricing. And then the Bank of Ghana is also complaining of the same problem. So the question is, who regulates the regulator? Because if the regulator is complaining, just as I'm also complaining that we had a rollicking, it was a problem for the majority. You buy foodstuffs in the morning, it's different. By evening, the price is different. You go to the market in the morning, by evening, the price is different. You try to buy spare parts in the morning, you send your driver with the price. By afternoon, he calls to say that, the prices have increased. So I guess the regulator and us went through the same crisis. So my question is, who regulates the regulator?
Well, the regulator is supposed to focus on ensuring that inflation figures are steady.
Say that the regulator breached the protocol because I don't know the other side. There's always all the alterum partem, and I'm also not going to say that the regulator was at fault. But my question is, reading the regulator's response, the regulator went through the same crisis that we, the average citizens, went through. So who regulates the regulator? That is my question.
Lawyer Jantua, looking at the legal framework that governs the Bank of Ghana's operations and financial decisions, and we're trying to still probe in further as to whether indeed it did breach the act, and by trying to salvage the situation by just going about lending money to the government without doing the right things and seeking parliamentary approval. After wading into the conversation over the week, I think I've seen articles from you, and what would you say would be the key responsibilities and limitations regarding the breach of act in the context the Bank of Ghana is seeing?
Say the last bit again. What would be the what?
What will be the key implications, limitations on the Bank of Ghana's breach in this particular context?
Good morning to listeners, good morning to our viewers, and good morning to Madam. I'm not sure whether I'm your senior or you're my senior.
You can't be my senior.
I can't be your senior. I finished law school in 85, so a long time ago. Look, I believe when the MPP government came into power, 2017, all was not well. All was not well. And it was an opportunity, especially because of the fact that we were under an IMF program. It would have been the right time to do a holistic look at all the financial things that guarded our finances. So, Bank of Ghana, Ministry of Finance, all the implications, some of the things that we were doing, some of the things that had created quite a lot of challenges for us to get to where we got to when the NPP came into power. However, we kind of got comfortable and relaxed. And I'll give you 2 examples. We went back to massive accessing of loans. That's on the Ministry of Finance side. On the Bank of Ghana side, the cocoa bills that we were doing, where we would go get money from outside, come to purchase our cocoa, we really didn't look at that. We should have asked ourselves, this particular process and procedures that we've been having all year, every time, that is what we do. Is it helping the economy? And did a huge MOT, as they say in the UK, when you take your car for servicing and making sure that everything on the car is working, they call it MOT. A huge MOT with regards to our finances because we're an IMF. And the objective should have been that IMF ain't going there again. So let's look at the processes. Let's look at the procedures. Let's look at what we're doing wrong to stop us from going in there again. And this particular exercise could not have been only an exercise for government, but an exercise with parliament, an exercise with stakeholders, an exercise that if it so happened that the current government would not be in power during the next election or when the next election came, there would be continuity of any government that came into power. But we didn't. And we've left it so long, and the actions that we took in terms of every first quarter, we go and get loan to cover a weak cedi. Every first quarter, we do bonds. Every first quarter, we go to the bond market. Got comfortable. And it's come to bite us. It's come to bite us. Because we didn't put the real regulations that would govern how we handle our finances in place. And you asked me whether the Bank of Ghana breached.
Yes, I did.
Did they not print money for government?
They haven't responded to that.
I said, did they not?
They haven't responded to that.
How was government supposed to handle itself when it didn't have money?
In the words of the Deputy Minister, they will come up with a response, and we are waiting for that.
What are they waiting for? What are they waiting for? And anyway, where we found ourselves, the economy would have collapsed in total.
Are you justifying indirectly?
Well, look at how we were snuffed out of the markets, and the exchange rate cedi situation we found ourselves in. Money wasn't coming in.
If we're all supposed to go about not following protocols, that will make us unlawful.
You see, one of the challenges we have in this country is that we tend to always gratify the political party in power and not gratify what the country needs to be done. That's a major challenge. The Bank of Ghana should be able to stand up. And I wish the Bank of Ghana would come and tell us. When the Minister of Finance was going out getting all these loans and seeing the trajectory of where the economy was going, because we were warned by some of the international institutions, IMF, World Bank, did they advise government that, hold on, where we are heading for is not right?
Is there a reason why it remained opaque until it came up with a response when these allegations were raised against them?
That I won't be able to know. Ask them. Ask them. Because I expect the Bank of Ghana, because whatever the Bank of Ghana does, it affects the commercial side of things. And affecting the commercial side, it affects the private sector. And if you say the private sector is the engine of growth, and there's no money for the private sector to get, how does that engine of growth work? And so you can see there's a huge responsibility on the Bank of Ghana, where government is overexpending to pull the brakes on government. And in pulling the brakes of government, you are an independent regulator.
Are we still referring to them as independent regulators?
That is what they are supposed to be. And as I said before, partisanship has taken place of country. But really, Bank of Ghana should stand and say, Mr. President, he can't go there.
So clearly it has lost its independence and autonomy.
Well, it is because of the Constitution.
What does the Constitution say?
Who appoints the Bank of Ghana governor? You are here. You are working for Asase. If Asase wants you to do certain things, that you in yourself, you feel those certain, the question mark, will you oppose Asase? You want to get your pay? You want to be in employment? You don't want to stay at home? And for me, the Bank of Ghana's governor should be able to tell the Minister of Finance where you're going is leading the country into disarray. Stop it.
Do you think we will see that?
Look. The Exchequer, the governor of the British Central Bank, the Conservative Party were going a certain way. He went right up to the Prime Minister and told him, don't let us go down that route. Because if we go down that route, A, B, C, D, E would happen. It's up to the government to say, okay, Mr. Governor, if what you say is true, show me proof, and let's see how we work it through. I want to find out whether the Bank of Ghana governor, whether he approached the Minister of Finance, whether he approached the President, when we started getting warnings. When? Did he tell the President where we are going? It can be a challenge for us. More importantly, the revenue stream of cocoa and how we handle cocoa should have been one area where the discussion should have started 2017 when the new government came in. All the negatives that the previous government got us to where we were, that got the economy into a very difficult situation, should have been taken up and discussed and said, never again will we go through this. But currently, where we stand, 60.8 billion. Nobody can tell me that it would not have a significant effect on the Bank of Ghana and the industry today. Because, you see, where you have a country where we are not really adding value to those commodities that can help the economy grow, in trouble. And I'm sure you read, I made a statement on one of the channels. I don't understand how we spend $30 to $40 million in importing onions and tomatoes. I don't understand it. Why? So those countries can export. We don't have soil in Ghana to grow and export. We don't. And if we can't take care of these types of costings, it makes the cedi very, very, very volatile. Very, very volatile. And for me, the responsibility of the cedi is the responsibility of the bank, the responsibility of the Minister of Finance, the responsibility of government. Because look, if we have a strong cedi, that cedi can go far. That cedi can buy a lot of things. But if you have a weak cedi, no matter how much cedis you have, enko baby, and that becomes a challenge. And so far as I'm concerned, even if you say, and remember, the Bank of Ghana can lend to government. The law states that they can lend up to 5%.
Yes, that's the threshold.
That's the threshold.
Yes.
When they lend over 5%, what were they supposed to do? What's the regulation? You need to go to Parliament to get approval. Are you trying to tell me that if they went to Parliament and sought approval, they wouldn't have gotten the approval? So why didn't they go to Parliament? So you find that some of the regulatory breaches that have gone on, you then ask the question, was there a reason? Was there a reason that we don't know? Was there a reason that the Minister of Finance did what he did? Was there a reason? If this were any other country, the mere fact that that was breached, the Minister of Finance would resign. If this were any other country, the governor of the Bank of Ghana with 60.8 million would resign. Would resign. And maybe it's no fault of his, but he came to supervise that happening. Is it happening in Ghana? So where does the confidence come in? Where the people, because above all this, government, The people need to have confidence in the government that the government will do the right thing. Once that confidence breaks, it becomes very difficult. Because in this country, unfortunately, we do not follow rules and regulations. The people themselves do not follow laws, rules, and regulations. So when that confidence is broken, it becomes very difficult to repair. And these are some of the things governments in power should look at.
Very well. Kwame Jantua, let me move to you, Fatima. Fatima, the allegations and concerns, have created some uncertainty in the submissions made by Professor Lord Mensah. The public image of the central banking director, the public image of the country, scares off investors. How does the government plan to reassure both domestic and international stakeholders about our economic resilience moving forward, despite the strong assurance coming in from the IMF? We don't want to scare off our investors. This is a huge amount, but what kind of reassurance would you say we can make both internationally and locally?
I don't think there are any serious concerns for any international investors. If the IMF position is known and shows that the central bank is not in a position as bad as the minority is pushing it out to be, I don't think any international investor or rating agency or anybody will take the minority's position over that of IMF. At least they have the expertise and they have some key institutions and capacity to do investigations to see what's the actual situation on the ground, especially when we are under an IMF program. You get the point. That being said, do not forget that last year, it is the same IMF program that brought about the DDEP, which was one of the condition precedents we were supposed to fulfill before we can get the staff level approval. So the IMF from day one, they are aware of what the processes has been and what they expected the government of Ghana to do until this point. So they don't have any doubt, and their position is not far from what the government's position has been. However,
I hope you are not blaming them for bringing the DEP.
No. I said it is. I mentioned earlier that it was necessary for us to start afresh, clear the books, get some stability, and at least we know what is happening to the cedi now. The anticipation and projections of some economists that the cedi was supposed to approach some 30 cedi by December last year or January is not the case. If anything at all, at least in the last quarter, we have seen some semblance of stability. That being said, someone called me yesterday that, they said the minority have organized a press conference and that the taxi driver was asking her whether someone has stolen money at the Bank of Ghana. At that point, I knew there was a lot of misinformation in town. And that is what I believe is our duty as the foremost PR arm or unit of the government to also help explain and separate the issues. For instance, some are saying, they said they bought gold watches at 2 million Ghana cedis for the directors. This is a 2016 publication by Graphic. It is not part of the issues that we are discussing now. But now that people have shared screenshots and all that, if you are not really careful, you will think, I didn't read the IMF response. I didn't really listen to the press conference. I have not read the annual report. And then people are just consuming all those falsehoods together with whatever is contained in the
Clearly, Fatima, I would strongly say they've gotten themselves in this situation as a result of lack of clear communication and transparency. And I dare say that you just rightly mentioned your office as the PR for the government. But we've seen little to no form of communication regarding these issues. We expect some form of another press conference that we always do where media will come around. How do you intend to break it down to them? Because in their minds, once an issue of corruption comes up, someone has stolen money and it's in their pockets. How do you intend to bridge that gap?
Some of those specified entities or institutions, they have their own corporate affairs
and they've only done that through press statements.
And how they run their PR and communications. We as a government have become an interested party because, of course, whatever misinformation or communication out there will eventually fall on government, because people are not saying it's BOGB now, they are saying the government. So due to public interest concerns,
it is important that as we understand the issues, we come out to explain. But I will always encourage the BOG to be forthcoming with a lot of explanation, even if they have to do media tour and do some road shows. I know as for the statements and materials, they've put a lot of them out there. But when they have some technical directors like you had with Mr. Opata, which I listened to, I think it's very important.
Let me come to you, Madam Gloria Foribuedu. And your major concern listening to you earlier has been the prices you usually hear of when you go on the market. Today it's 5 cedis. In the afternoon, you go with 10 cedis. And the major concern to you has been the inflation figures. And what measures do you think this government can take to ensure that future debt management strategies are successful and do not lead to similar losses?
I wouldn't want to comment, because when you look at the Constitution, some responsibility is on the Bank of Ghana and some on the Ministry of Finance. But right now, the Bank of Ghana has responded to our concerns about the problems that they faced during the post-COVID era, 2020, 2021, including the fluctuations in the currency and the pricing of some goods and services that directly affected their operations. So I will want to say that whoever regulates our regulator, which is the Bank of Ghana, should be up and doing. But the question is, who regulates the regulator?
And my question to you again is, how do we? What strategies do you? If you had a say on this matter, if you had a say, what kind of advice? If you are an advisor to the governor of the Bank of Ghana?
Well, if I had a say, then I'll say that we have, within the past 2 years, we've come to realize that the exchange rate, well, it's always been important, but it's become so visible due to its impact directly on the average consumer that it's very, very important that our exchange rate, as much as possible, is protected from fluctuations, because Ghana is heavily dependent on imported, inputs and ingredients into our daily goods and services. And not only that, the fuel is also heavily dependent on that, and that also affects our farming inputs and our farming produce. Right now it's very expensive to farm because the cost of weedicide has increased. The cost of, I'm a poultry farmer, chicken feed was increasing by the day, sometimes even by the hour. In the morning it's 390 something per bag, by afternoon it's 405 per bag. I mean, it's been quite some hell. So the exchange rates, so the regulator or the regulator of the regulator should look at the exchange rates.
Now, finally, my final question to Fatima and Jantwa. I mean, what potential legal reforms or changes do you suggest we enhance? We come up with devise to enhance accountability, transparency, and overall legal framework governing the operations of the Bank of Ghana, considering the recent challenges it has faced? Let me begin with you, Kwame Jantwa. Although there are existing laws,
quite a lot of
the existing laws, but how do we, enhance these particular existing laws?
To enhance them, we need to abide by them.
Aside from holding them accountable, transparency has clearly also been a problem.
Transparency and accountability. Sometimes we do the transparency, we don't do the accountability. And that's where the challenge is. And every day and every time when we see glitches in some of the performances of the Bank of Ghana and other financial institutions, we are heavy to defend. We are heavy to defend. Even when it's wrong, we are heavy to defend. Even when they defend, and that defense, it does not make sense, they still defend. And my learned friend, you talked about the fact that we are heavily dependent on imports. When are we going to break that chain? When? I mean, at the beginning of the MPP's 2017, added value was preached. Added value was preached. And if we do not depend on ourselves, and we want to do import, how is the city going to be strong enough for my dear lady to make sure that her poultry farm where is in competition with dead chickens coming from America and all places, that she will succeed. How? And the Bank of Ghana has a huge role to play. So maybe we should take the laws and regulations that govern the financial institutions and see those ones that are old school and archaic. And for me, that is one thing I'm beginning to realize. The old school mentality in the way we govern seems to have taken so much space that we are not ready to change. But where we are going and where the world is going, with the likes of AI and all these new computer things that are coming in, we've got to change. Those old ideas have to change. And perhaps some of the laws that we have are old school. It has to change. Some of the laws that we have stem from where? NLC. Some stem from a champon. We need to do a holistic, and for me, that was what I felt the MPP coming in. They would look at all these things. The first 4 years, because of where we were, I thought they would look at all this, especially our revenues coming in, especially our financial institutions, that they will be able to change things gradually. Look, one of the major things that has happened in these last 4 years, or can I say 8 years, is Parliament. It's Parliament in terms of the numbers. But have you realized something? Because we are used to the old school way, the majority has a huge number of parliamentarians. When it now changed, look at the kind of mayhem that has gone through Parliament. It's not a bad thing. The mayhem we've gone through Parliament is not a bad thing, because what is it doing? It is equipping us to be able to handle a situation where there's a balance of members, opposition and majority. However, we should also make sure that as we go forward, and in 2024, it could happen that the party that wins the executive position might have less members in Parliament. It could happen. So I'm talking generally. We've got to a point where we are at ground zero. This IMF situation, and some of the things, have we done DDP before? Some of the things we are doing today, have we done it before? We're ground zero. It is time for us to go back. Look at all the glitches in all the various institutions, including Parliament, and the possibility of Parliament changing, how we would handle it. We are not doing that homework. And if we don't do that homework, and it now comes to meet us and bites us, we get confused and don't know how to handle things. And then in the end, who are caught in the middle?
Right.
The people.
Indeed, the future is has a lot of potential to shape us up pretty well, or leave us in some uncertainty.
That's why I feel it's not all bad. It feels bad now,
but it has a potential to look good. Certainly,
yes. But it depends on us and how we handle it to make it
sure.
good.
And Fatima, I wish I'd come to you, but let me bring in Ni Papo Samuadu. He has missed out on all the action, but let's get his impressions on the ongoing submissions. I mean, our guest in studios have made, especially when minority. I know he wants to address fully the breach and of the act the minorities are alleging the Bank of Ghana failed to follow. Paco, general thoughts on the responses from the Bank of Ghana to the minority after raising allegations of not following due protocol, coming up with a lot of ominous figures regarding its operational cost and the 60.8 billion losses in DDP. What will be your general thoughts on these?
Good morning to our wonderful listeners. Good morning to my former lecturer. She taught me the gender. Yes. Yes. Feminism. Yes. That University of Ghana. I had an A though. I was a good student. I was a very good student. She was a very good lecturer. And to my branch members of the Trubu, His Grace A, It's been a 4-week break. It's been I had to go and rest more. I've greeted all of you. I've missed you. I've missed you. I've missed you. I've missed you.
Council, we can exchange this pleasantries later.
And Fatima as well. You see, the Bank of Ghana, and I think people must understand that there's a former deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana who is on trial for causing financial loss to the state. Do you understand? So there's everything. There's everything bad about a situation where I know a lot of times people don't understand why the act, no, even the constitutional provisions that create the Bank of Ghana insulate it from government interference. The Bank of Ghana is not the personal cash boy of the executive. You understand? It actually has a constitutional mandate to ensure that we have micro and macro stability when it comes to management of our currency and other related matters. And it is not for nothing that the position of governor and his deputies and are protected under the constitution. You just don't get up and remove him for the sake of removal. So he has some insulation. He has some independence. The problem we've had as a minority has been what appears to be the dereliction of duty by the governor in acting as a check on government expenditure. Yes, the Bank of Ghana is the lender of last resort, and it is allowed under the provisions of its act to provide overdrafts to government as and when, including even emergency situations. But then we've said what? Don't give them more than 5% of the last year's revenue. And it is for good reason. It is for good reason, because we also expect the government to be prudent in the manner in which it manages our resources and to also generate income. And so, as and when there's an emergency, yes, the Bank of Ghana is supposed to provide some lending support. But remember that the Bank of Ghana does not it doesn't accept deposits. It's not like the commercial bank or the rural bank or anywhere else where you go and put in your money and then they are allowed to use that money to invest. The only way the Bank of Ghana provides budget support is to print money. Basically, it's a custodian of money, but it prints money. That is the overdraft they'll give to the government. Basic economics. When you have more cedis in the system than needs to be, what do you have? Inflation. Because you have oversupply of your currency. If the criticism is to do with one, the inability of the Bank of Ghana to act as a check on government expenditure, and two, Bank of Ghana's own internal expenses are crazy. If you look at some of their ongoing projects and you compare their expenditure patterns from let's say when we were in government, when NDC was in government, 2016. In 2016, for example, there was zero government budget financing, zero. And yet in that year, we had an election. We had a lot of projects ongoing. Go back 2012, or look at from 2012 all the way to 2016. Year in and year out, what has been the Bank of Ghana's internal expenses as against what they are doing now?
But let's stick to the 2022 figures that has been revealed by the auditor report.
You say that you are embarking on a new head office. What is the value for money in respect of that project? You are other banks. We've seen the EcoBank building, new building. We've seen other buildings which are going for $60 million, for $50 million. You are going for a $250 million projected head office. Whatever the justifications may be, is it a prudent expenditure as we speak now? Have we got budget value for money on that project? If you look at your recurrent expenses, the allowances that you are paying, monthly allowances you are paying to your directors, which according to some calculations amounts to about $8,000 a month, or roughly. Why? For a country like Ghana, anybody who serves on the board of the Bank of Ghana should be doing so voluntarily. In my opinion, it is an honor to serve on the bank because you are supposed to be an accomplished person in your field. So we will give you sitting allowance. It should be an honorarium. It should be an honorarium. Why should not the secretary be taking almost $8,000 equivalent? Why? Why? But if it's not true, what is the figure? What is the figure? Do you understand? It shouldn't, no, because they are a board of directors. Their board of directors, the Ministry of Finance has come out with a communique on what board of directors are supposed to be earning.
So the only figures they came up with had to do with vehicle maintenance levies and
so
some computer repairs. So what you are saying are just allegations. But in the defense of the bank, it came on to explain and give a breakdown to the cost that some monies have gone into. And certainly, a lot of these monies require them to work.
Yes, but you see, when you look at their vehicle expenses, some of the expenses can actually buy brand new vehicles.
You know the state of our road. You know the state of a lot of things in this country.
I know the Bank of Ghana, what the Bank of Ghana does. I mean, you are supposed to maintain currency in the whole country. They are supposed to have regional offices maintain. We understand. See, the thing is this. There's always been a perception, however unfair, that Bank of Ghana, and when you work at the Bank of Ghana, it is one of the how do I say, the most rewarding of places to work. Number one. Number two, you rarely see adverts for Bank of Ghana, unless I'm lying, Gloria. I don't know the last time you saw an open advert for positions in the Bank of Ghana. It's almost a mystery how we fill positions in the Bank of Ghana. They are accountable to the people of Ghana. And the minority, as the members of parliament, have oversight over them. And so when we bring out these issues, you understand, they are for good reason. For the first time, at least, we've put the radar on their expenses. The same way they have been regulating other banks and saying that those banks were insolvent because of bad and poor management. You read the report. Part of the, what do you call it? The bank crisis was as a result of allegations of what? Poor management practices by what? By those banks. As for the issue of bankruptcy, well, they have come to say central banks can never be insolvent or bankrupt. And so we shouldn't worry about the issue of bankruptcy. But my problem has to do with financial indiscipline on their part. That's one. Two, their inability to act as a check on government expenditure. You see, when they act as a check on, I can understand when you say that if they didn't also help government, Ghana's economy would have come. But they should have gone to parliament. They should have forced the Minister of Finance to go and report to Parliament and seek parliamentary approval. That is one of the issues.
So are you saying the bank has lost its sense of independence?
Oh, clearly. They have, you see, the point is this. If you cannot act as the check and ensure that the government does not go beyond the 5% limit, and that if they were to do, if it was a governor of the Bank of Ghana who was acting as an independent person, what he would have done was to write to the Minister of Finance and tell the Minister of Finance to come to Parliament so that all of, you see, the thing about parliamentary democracy is that the Parliament is the representative of the people. You understand? So when something is going on and you are forced to come to the people's representative, we will hear about it. But where there is this umbilical cord between the governor and the Minister of Finance, they are like Siamese twins. This one writes to this one, and then this one also does whatever he likes to this one. So there's no independence of relationship where what was anticipated by the constitutional arrangement is no longer at play. And so until they came out with their report and the minority hashed on it and then also blew it and came out to the press conference. You and I didn't know what was going on. And so this should act as a call to awaken our senses to the Bank of Ghana. We need to relook at the regulations and the law on the Bank of Ghana. I think that Parliament should invite the governor of the Bank of Ghana on a special session to come and brief the House on how we got into that mess.
Right.
And then we look at amending the Bank of Ghana Act to make it more impossible for the Minister of Finance to have that kind of unlimited financial access to the Bank of Ghana in terms of being able to literally instruct the Bank of Ghana to provide budgetary support in the manner that breaches the 5% law.
Are you saying that law is in?
The law is there, but the problem is that if we have to go further, next time we should amend the law and make it clear that before the governor of the Bank of Ghana can, give that kind of overdraft beyond the 5%, he must alert Parliament. No, hold on. The law does not say or require the governor of the Bank of Ghana to write to Parliament seeking parliamentary approval before he could do what he did. Imagine that was done. The alarm would have blown long ago. We would have actually known. You see, when the minority was warning the government about the reckless borrowing they were borrowing, about the potential that the economy was going to collapse, what did they say? Oh, we are naysayers. Go and look at the speeches of the finance minister. He will quote the Bible and then give you a nice jab at the back of it. Today, we are being told by the Bank of Ghana that our budget deficit was around 105%. This government has failed. It has always sworn that they had not gone beyond 100%. Look at the statement of the Bank of Ghana. They actually admit the fact that our budget deficit had run to 105%. And that because of that, they had to intervene. Other than that, Ghana's economy would have collapsed.
The challenge isn't the fact that the laws aren't there.
The challenge is the fact that when you have an overbearing finance minister who has an insidious relationship with the the Bank of Ghana governor, you need to separate them. That is why incest is the crime.
The challenge is the Constitution.
That is why the
challenge is the Constitution.
The challenge is not the Constitution. The Constitution has provided the broad framework of what the relationship should be between the Bank of Ghana and the Finance Ministry.
Yeah. When I say the law, wait. When I say the Constitution, it depends on who elects.
We all know that an overbearing executive will always have the potential to abuse his power. That is why I am calling for an amendment of the Bank of Ghana Act, which will require, beyond the fact that the law says they cannot give an overdraft of 5% on the last year's turnover, we should go a step further. If for any reason there is an emergency or there is the need for the government to borrow beyond the 5%, Parliament must be involved. We need parliamentary approval.
Yes, Paco, I will need to cut you here. We don't want to miss out on all the intensity and action in our subsequent discussion. But you have the last bits here.
I would like to respond to some allegations or issues raised by Paco. There is nowhere in the 2022 reports that shows that the BOG has been paying the equivalent of $8,000.
That's an allegation. Yes.
To its directors.
How much do they pay?
And it is unfortunate.
How much do they pay?
I'm coming to that. It is unfortunate that we are now in a regime where someone will level an allegation against you without any proof, and they say, I have alleged. You show that it is not the case. It is not done anyway. There should be basis for you to raise that issue that they were paying some $8,000 a month for any directors. It is not in the report. If you read the full report, their entire expenses for the board, external directors' fee, logistics and training was 8.6 million Ghana cedis.
So where you do the average?
There is nowhere.
Where you do the average?
Even if you use that same amount to even allocate to everybody, the 13 board of directors, the external directors, and all that, it will not come anywhere near that amount that Paco is alleging right now, which is a repetition.
You are the government representative. Tell us, rebut it.
No, but if you
say we are not,
wrong
this was an expert.
You allege something against me, and I have to.
these allegations, if you come with allegations, you come with evidence.
Responses because
Fatima, just a moment. Papo, if you come with allegations, I believe you come with evidence. And per her remarks, she's coming with evidence per the response the Bank of Ghana has given. So carry on, Fatima.
The Bank of Ghana has not officially responded to that
It
particular
hasn't
in the
responded to
It is
the
already
kind
in
of
the
money
report.
that
It's
went
not in the
into
response.
its
It is
operational
in the
expenses.
report.
Let's hear
Okay,
from
no
Fatima.
problem.
Now
Fatima.
let me come to the second issue. You know, there is some dishonesty in the way the minority, especially the minority leader, has led Ghanaians. That's why it is sad that I don't appreciate the fact that the BOG response was belated. It was my wish that as soon as they had started the press conference, the BOG would have been forthcoming with responses on the matter. Let me start by saying that on the record, at the Bank of Ghana, since the 1990s, they did some assessments and realized that they needed a new head office because the building was weak. In recent years, let's start from 2020, the year 2012, when the current minority leader was a member of the board of the Bank of Ghana. In 2012, the BOG was allocated 5.19 acre land at Accra Central by the Lands Commission. They paid 791,500 Ghana cedis for it. They were actively looking or seeking to build a new head office. They couldn't access that land because the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had some properties on it, and they refused to give vacant possession to the Bank of Ghana. In 2013, Calista Ghana Limited also negotiated to sell. Calista was led by Mr. Kingsley Kwame Wadako at the time, to sell a land to the BOG for their new head office at West Ridge at $32.313 billion US. In 2014, KLA Law.
Is that the cost of the land?
I beg your
Was that
pardon.
the cost of the land?
Yes.
How much?
$32.313 million US. It is on record. If you check their minutes and everything, and I'm saying the minority leader was a member of the board of the Bank of Ghana. In 2015, in fact, they were able to negotiate with Ibistec Limited to acquire land at Achimota to build their new head office. But unfortunately, they failed to reach an agreement. And for failing to reach an agreement in 2015, on 25th June 2015, BOG negotiated in 2015 to pay Ibistec Limited 1.2 million Ghana cedis for failing to acquire the land for the head office. The arguments from all that was that they had seen cracks. The building was from the 60s. It was not fit for purpose. It could collapse anytime. They don't know when. Just as some assessment has been made on some places like the conference center, among others. That being said, if you were a member of the board of the bank and subsequently became a deputy finance minister, and you, in the minutes of the bank, has never objected to the acquisition of a head office, and in 2012, which is 11 years ago, you felt the building was not fit for purpose. 11 years later, what makes you think that that building should not be tagged? They did not need a new head office. They should have stayed in that. Is there not some level of dishonesty in this whole presentation from the minority? If indeed you felt that in 2012 that the building was spoilt, it had cracked, it was problematic, they had done some assessments and said that even air tremors, the building cannot stand a number of them, it will collapse. We don't work at the Bank of Ghana. We don't know what they have in it. But if for nothing at all, we know the critical equipment and documents and the gold reserves and whatever they have there. And this is something they have pursued and actively worked towards from successive governments since the 1990s. So my argument is that if you have any queries with regards to the building of a head office, the query should be that maybe I don't agree with the amount that you have quoted. If there was an independent assessment by AESL or any company, how much would they value such a project? That is a legitimate call that anyone who wants to have a conversation on the costing or the price or how much they are committing should have. But to make it like a line item and publicly ridicule them as if the BOG doesn't need a head office. When since the 90s, you said even the Central Business District has caught up with such a critical infrastructure which could have been in a secluded place. You said from the 60s, over how many years now the building is cracked, it has a lot of problems and all that. I think it is not fair.
Isn't it also not fair for us not to see this assessment it says it has? Because a lot of people are asking that you say in an event where there's an earthquake, your building will be affected. Last I checked, I mean, earthquake-prone areas was not the central part of Accra. I mean, they are around Waja and those areas. And I believe so much that it will do the public some good if this assessment was put out there in the public.
My point is that let's not talk about the Bank of Ghana building as if it is a 3-unit classroom block. It is not fair. I have seen some people even say, hey, you want to relocate. How about the market woman? How about this? Everybody's life matter. But as I said, I don't work in the bank. I don't know what we have there.
I just read the bit on that building, and per your explanation and per what it has given, it lays a lot of emphasis on the earth tremors with little to no emphasis on cracks and other parts of the building.
The building is old. It's
and
old.
I am saying, Fatima, I'm saying
other buildings there which were built in the 90s
clearly,
and 2000s.
It's very old. Agreed, it's old. But my point is, I mean, that's the fair defense you are given. But then it has also failed to give a very good defense by saying, if you could put pictures out there that these are the cracks of the building, this is the state of the building, that would be great.
Look, you need data to support what you say.
They have
and we have the,
exactly my point.
We have the earthquake people. What are they called in this country?
Seismologists.
They know where all the faults are. Why don't they? What they say? Why don't they support it with the data for us to say that yes,
anyway,
it's true?
So my point is that the NDC, at least on the record since 2012, have never been against the construction of a new head office for the Bank of Ghana. In fact, they have been actively pursuing it.
What happens to the city office, which is also a part of the Bank of Ghana, the city office?
What happens to
the city office?
I beg your pardon. So that one, as you mentioned, if they can put the data out there for people to see exactly what is affected, because there were, I believe, also in the early 2000s, they were seeking to even acquire some of the adjoining properties within the area so that they can level everything and then start it afresh. But unfortunately, due to litigation and ownership problems, they couldn't successfully secure such acquisitions. But that being said, we shouldn't just rubbish it that the Bank of Ghana is just their taste bad, that is it's just for luxury, they don't need the head office. You wake up tomorrow and God forbid the building has collapsed and we say we have lost this, we have lost that, we have lost this, and then the same Ghanaians will say, why were you not proactive? Why did you not get a new one? If you knew it had problems, why wait till this time? And let me come to finally. They mentioned their transportation budget.
Yes.
And limited it to just maintenance of currency across the country. But there is more to it. As stated by the BOG in their second statement, you know, per their laws, per their act, they are supposed to visit at least once every single branch of every financial institution in the country every year, at least once. All microfinances, all savings and loans companies, all banks, all institutions that are regulated by the bank or that are under the supervisory division of the bank, they are supposed to visit all of them. All their bullion vans are included, of course, for the purpose of maintaining currency. Just a few months ago, the BOG and I think that was Ministry of Interior or Defense were trying to make some arrangements to see how they can airlift currency to some hard to reach areas because of attacks of bullion vans. So there is so much to it beyond making it appear as if when the state transport budget, it's as if some 5 big men have bought some V8s and they are cruising and they are buying fuel anyhow. the impression created out there is not a reflection of what they themselves have put out in their statement. And if you think you have contrary information, I think it is fair to bring some comparative analysis. That
what do they need
in
guest houses for?
2016 or in 2015, these were their transport costs. These were how they were operating. But to just go ahead and then just rubbish everything and make it appear as if it's unheard of, some people have embezzled some money somewhere, I don't think it is fair.
Very well, very well. Okay, we'll have to move on to the next discussion.
Remind me, there's something in construction, the quantity of what? When
quantity surveying? Are you not referring to that?
No. When you do your calculation of how much you need, bill of quantities. Thank you, madam. Shouldn't the Bank of Ghana, at this point where everybody is talking about the 250 million, take a page in the graphic and give us the bill of quantities?
Certainly.
To stop the argument. It could be a good thing to have a new bank.
Clarity on this thoughts will do some good.
Clear with us.
Yeah.
So that we don't start pointing fingers. And in doing that bill of quantities, in doing that bill of quantities, also give us data, seismic data of earthquake prone areas and see how it affects it. Once we got this, we would know what they are saying.
Right.
And just a point of information.
Yes, Fatima.
You know they are bidding and seeking to even host a regional bank. Because now we are hosting after. Oh, but those ones attract a lot of investments, and if you have all these offices and they are employing Ghanaian, you know, if you go to after, you will have more Ghanaians than foreigners.
Anyway,
just by
right.
virtue of we hosting it.
Right.
So it is not a bad thing in itself.
Okay. Like in a nutshell, all we are saying is the Bank of Ghana should be very clear in its reason for backing these claims and wanting to use some of these monies to come up with such facilities. However, let's move on to our next conversation. However, if you're doing the listening, this is Assassin 99.5 Accra, and this is the forum. We are also transmitting across Assassin 98.5 Kumasi, Assassin 99.7 Tamale, Assassin 100.3 in Cape Coast, and across our affiliates in other regions. Now, just days after the public revelation of stolen money by her house helps, the Office of the Special Prosecutor searched the former Sanitation Minister Cecilia Dapaah minister's residences in light of the substantial amount that have been reported missing. 3 properties belonging to Cecilia located in Cantonment, Abelemkpe, and Tesano were subjected to a search. Fresh details from the Office of the Special Prosecutor revealed that a cash amount of $590,000 was discovered during the search at the Abelemkpe home. At the same residence, a sum of 2.73 million Ghana cedis in cash was found. Officials from the Office of the Special Prosecutor subsequently seized these cash sums to aid ongoing investigations. Meanwhile, an Accra High Court has set Thursday, 17th August, to rule on the confirmation or otherwise of the freezing of these bank accounts. These are developing stories to the Cecilia Dapaah and issue and case, and we are bringing this conversation into our studios, and I would like to begin with yes, Madam Gloria Ofori-Buedu. We miss your voice. We didn't want to allow the gentleman to continue with the action and intensity, leaving yourself out. Madam, my first question to this, I want to base my first question to an article or a write-up I saw of Kwame Jantua and in the news space, innocent until proven guilty. Madam, would you say, how does the presumption of innocence apply in this case, considering the significance of money that has been discovered? Throw some more light into the legal perspective to this discussion.
The rules of natural justice are basically two. The Aldi Alteram pattern. Let's hear both sides. And then the Nemo Judas in Causa Sua. Make sure that you are not involved in some matter that you have personal interest. Now, with this, let's hear both sides. We keep hearing the side of the OSP, and then after we'll hear it through the media news, and then the next time we hear that the OSP is saying that his office is not responsible for that kind of news. It's getting so confusing. So I would say that the OSP, well, I even have an issue with the OSP's, the legislation, the fact that the OSP cannot do much except through the Attorney General, but that's for another day. But the OSP should do something about information flow, because we can't have the media houses talking about something and then the next time the OSP comes out to say it's not true. It's getting very confusing. So something has to be done about the OSP's, maybe the information flow, the supervision.
I think it's doing that rightly. I mean, when there were rumors and speculations of the amount in her frozen account that was being spearheaded and propagated by a media outlet, Joy FM, it came out to debunk those reports that indeed they have frozen her account. These monies were discovered in her homes, but such monies have not been put out there as to the monies in her account.
We also have a freeze on news from the OSP's office pending the outcome of this.
I believe if there's a freeze on the news from the OSP, it doesn't allow for transparency.
Please,
the only thing I wanted to do, that's a small
right.
That you see, the OSP itself, by the fact that we are all lawyers, cannot comment on ongoing court issues, but the source of the news was the motion they filed.
Certainly.
The motion they filed actually was picked by the news outlets who they were able to see.
But the motion, I'll be amazed if it included the bank account balance.
It doesn't.
Because
you want to freeze
the bank? No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. It only gives the two banks, being Prudential and Societe Generale, without mentioning the amount in these banks. It only mentions the banks, but without mentioning.
I've worked in a bank for 11 years. I've also studied and taught banking. There's something called the banker customer confidentiality. So I was amazed when the news kept talking about bank balances and investment balances in SG, SSB, and Prudential. I was like, what's going on here? Can we have a freeze on all this? And then let's wait for the outcome of the OSP's report. Unfortunately, Madame Dapaah is a public official, but I guess if she was in the private sector, where I've known her to be also very active, the balance of whatever goes on in her home and all that will not have been of public, there will have not been that need for public information and some form of accountability. But because she's a public officer, I guess that's why it's going on. But please, right now it's so confusing. Right now there's all this breach of confidentiality. Let's have a freeze too of the OSP's report, and then let's wait for the outcome. Okay, the investigation. Every time you hear this matter, and then the next time the OSP comes out to debunk it and says it's not true, it's creating some form of credibility issue, and I think that's unfortunate. Let's have a freeze too on the OSP's reportage till pending the outcome of this investigation. That's my humble contribution.
Fatima, do you think that the media discussions on an ongoing investigation? Let me hear you.
If you look at the motion and if you look at the exhibits attached, you understand. The OSP wrote to the individual banks, okay, and mentioned her bank account details, and they have attached it as exhibits. And that is a court document. So you know that once it's a court document, there is some level of immunity over it, and it's one of the exceptions to the banker-customer relationship.
But there has been no response from the bank yet.
Oh,
no response from the figures. There's been no response. So the fake, I'll use the word, the news that is confusing, and that's always, that always precedes some form of intervention by the OSP that is false news. I think we need a freeze on that too, please.
Let me come to you, Fatima. Do you think that the media conversations, into Cecilia Dapaah's pending case, is affecting investigations? Do you side with Madame Gloria Ofori-Boadu? Do you think so?
Yeah, I strongly agree. But let me start by stating that if for anything, the lesson we have learned in this whole situation is that don't even keep money at home. It may not be people who will steal it. Even if it's fire, it will lead to a loss. That being said, I think sometimes I feel so sad how we have treated
Honorable Cecilia Dapaah, sometimes I'm like, is it because she's a woman? Because I don't think I'm coming to that. I don't think today, as we sit here,
to really go in that direction.
No, I'm coming to that. I don't think if today,
to this one.
if someone like Honorable Kennedy Agyapong says, "Oh, someone has stolen my 500,000 cedis in dollars or cedis in the house," it will be a big issue. Or despite says, my somebody has stolen my 300,000 euros in my house, it will be a big issue.
There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
What's the difference?
The difference is that Honorable Kennedy Agyapong is a member of parliament, but he's a known businessman with businesses.
Oh, you see,
she is a minister.
So that is what I am getting at.
No.
That is
Hold on.
Yes,
he's not a minister of state.
Proceed.
Do you understand? He's not a minister of state. He's not a minister of state. The difference is clear in respect of what is the track record that we know the person for. You understand? So, as much as we all don't want to pronounce on the guilt or innocence of Mrs. Cecilia Dapaah, when you want to play the gender card and you want to play any of those cards, I don't think you are helping her.
No, let me come.
Because we'll be forced to address it.
Let me come to the specific reason why I'm referring to that, and the reason why your argument is flawed.
Okay, if you open that door,
your argument is flawed because
as much as possible, take the politics out.
You are saying that there is records of their financial history or their businesses in the country.
Take the politics out.
Just because no.
Okay.
I'm not doing the politics. You let me at least let me make my point, because if you take it halfway,
I'll have to mute you, Papa.
I'll come in after she has
right at this point, Papa, I'll have to mute you.
Of the picture that I want to create, so don't cut me halfway. Okay. That being said, I'm saying that Honorable Cecilia Dapaah, in both President Kufuor's government and President Akufo-Addo's government, she has served publicly for at least 15 years. She has served more than once or twice as member of parliament. She is not Fatimatu. She is not 37. She is almost 70 years, if not 70. Her husband, listen, we are talking about a complaint that was filed by a couple, not just her. She and her husband. Her husband, no. I'm coming to that. You were saying that some people, I haven't seen that.
Fatima, carry on, please.
I even have the 8 August one.
Carry on.
I can share a copy to you. Her husband, who has also worked in his 80s, who has also worked all these years. That's why I premised my point by saying that I think it is wrong to keep money in the house, but the way the direction of the public discourse and the way this whole issue has been handled is just so sad, and you have been so unkind and fair to the woman. The assumption now is that you don't have based on what Neil was even cutting me to say, is that there is no record of her businesses, or they don't know how she came about those resources. But my point is that until the woman herself voluntarily filed a case against her domestic staff, there was not once an allegation of corruption against her. There was not once a scandal against her. There was not once an audited report or anything saying that she has stolen public funds, she has done this or that. She herself, on her own volition, reported her staff to be investigated or prosecuted for theft. And when the issue came out and all that, and it was in the media and they were throwing it about, she herself wrote that she will subject herself to any investigation or investigation process just to show cause and make sure she is able to clear her name and bring finality to this matter. Now the special prosecutor has said that they have interest in the matter and have taken it up, and she has opened up to subject herself to the entire process. All the lies that the media have peddled, I have seen a media house change the headline of their story about 2 or 3 times, because they will write and quote the source as special prosecutor. They will now go and edit and say some investigated, and the speculations are not contained in any document from the court. So at the end of the day, just because she is an appointee of this government or public official, those who will politically benefit from her misfortune, and those who are also benefiting from creating sensational stories are now adding other facts and creating stories and making the whole issue appear what it is not. So I think it is very unfortunate, and we should all be patient and allow the legal processes that have already been set in motion to take its course.
Madam
Yes,
Gloria.
it's very interesting. Yesterday, I went to the bank. I have a dollar account in the bank. I went to withdraw $1,000 for my own private purposes. Well, it's in the bank. Fortunately, it's not at home. Now, when I went to see the manager, who is female, and then she gave me to some cashiers, 2 cashiers. They're also female. I stood at the counter for a while, and they were fidgeting, and I was wondering, because I was in a hurry, I was going to attend the meeting. Finally, one cashier came to me and politely asked me, "Madam, is it your own money, or was it a remittance? Or are you expecting some payment?" And I was in a hurry, so I just said, "Please, it's my money. Can I have my money? I've been waiting. I need to attend a meeting." Within a twinkle of an eye, they gave it to me. So as I sat in my car, I said to myself, wow, so a middle-aged woman who has been like me, who has been working since 1983, 40 years, I cannot have that money. And so they have to come and waste my time. They have to waste my time at the bank and then come and ask me questions. Now, I've known, on that note, there's always an issue when we as women go looking for money. It's like, what this woman, what does she want? Is it her husband's money or something? But on the other side, that is something that we experience every day. It's like a form of sexism. But I've known Honorable Cecilia Dapaah since 83 when I worked in the bank. I used to work at NIB, which was close to Cocoa Board. She was working there at the time. Honorable Dambuchi was there, and then former Minister of Interior, Honorable Malik Hassan Yakub. I remember her very well. And then when she resigned from the bank, from Cocoa Board, she had this skincare products business. I think it was called Demarque or something. They were at Paloma and then later moved to Joglu. And I was even surprised when she took up a public office. Okay, I was like, but skincare products globally are a billionaire business. I mean, $1 billion business. Ask all the skincare, go online, find out. So I was like, why would she even bother herself with a public office? Because there are limitations with public office. Every dime must be accounted for. So it's something I've always wondered about. But apart from her business, I know her husband too was my father's mate at KNUST in the early 60s, and he's very, very well accomplished. Not only that, her mother was one of the senior queen mothers working with the Ashanti Queen Mother. And I remember a professor from the U.S. Yes, a very prominent Queen Mother. And I remember a professor in one of the U.S. universities who came down with the students. He gave them the opportunity for homestay with some of the royals. And an African American student, a girl, who lived with the mother of Honorable Cecilia Dapaah, was so overwhelmed because the way she was treated, she was given treatment like a princess. Her breakfast alone, I'm told she couldn't believe it. The breakfast table that was set for her and how she was treated. So this is a woman who comes from a mother with an accomplished background, okay? And then her brother, who also passed, was also one of the prominent chiefs for the Asantehene. I think he was the chief of one of the horn, the elephant tax horns or something. It's a whole cultural and historic significant position before he passed. And he also owned a shoe factory. I've read in some papers that he was a shoemaker or a shoe shine or something. But please, let's not get this bordering on the matter of trivialities. This is an important issue affecting someone who has been in government before, affecting a female. And I've told you that we suffer when it comes to economic empowerment. We are always looked down on. Someone was trying to take my land by force, and when I complained, said, she's an elderly woman, she's complaining. And I was like, what? So I can't complain when someone is encroaching on my land. We go through a lot. I could write a whole thesis on how we suffer gender imbalances and inequalities as professional women in this country. I've been working.
Are you citing
for 40
sexism
years.
in the way she's being treated?
I've given you all this background.
Yes, so are you citing, I want you to say on record that you are citing
she also has
sexism.
a career before
Right.
President Kufuor appointed her, before she became an MP. She had a career. Can our young persons know that she had a career? She has a profession and she's in business. That lady is a businesswoman. Maybe she doesn't go on air to talk about her business. So please, people, when I listen, they always start with her political life, but they don't talk about her personal life, her family life, her career, her business. Honorable Sisi Liadapa is a businesswoman, and I was even amazed that she. But I think the investigation is going on. I was even amazed when she took public office. I was like, she could, by now she would have done much, much better than she did. Public office is limitation. But please, it's limiting, sorry. It's very limiting. But please, we have an issue when it comes to women and economic, matters. And I've experienced it.
Let me come to you, Jantua. You have been surprisingly quiet. And we have heard, we've heard the court of public opinion. Lawyer Jantua, where does the actual law stand in this? Lawyer Jantua, I said we've had the court of public opinion. I mean, these in-studio discussions in itself is could be part of it. Where does the actual law stand on this?
Look, the challenge with Cecilia Dapa, the fact that my good learned friend has narrated all the things that she was and is. She's a politically exposed person. Irrespective of the fact that she might have businesses, she might have this, she might have that, she is in government. And when you're in government, you're not expected to do anything apart from the work that government has given you to do. And so if such monies are found, you've got to be able to prove it. And you read an article about something I said. Ghana's jurisprudence indicates that you are innocent until proven guilty. Full stop. And maybe the fact that some of these information is coming out because the documents that the OSP is giving out, the documents that the police are giving out, is giving information, creates a certain situation where papers too need to sell their stories. They say they will hype it up to a certain level, but it is not normal for even a businessman to keep $590,000 in his house. It's not normal, especially if the money is legit. And I'm not saying her money isn't legit because I don't know, but for a businessman, if the money is legit, you take it to the bank. Because you need to be able to prove to the bank that you're credible. Because you work on bank loans and all that. And the bank needs to see that your account is active. So you put it in the bank. Now, with regards to the monies in the bank, there is regulation, isn't there? And I don't understand why, if you've been able to tell us, and this is OSP, the amounts of money that you have found, why you can't tell us the amounts of money in the bank account? Because banks have the responsibility to advise the Bank of Ghana of any, and unfortunately I don't know the threshold, but there's a threshold, any amounts of money in anybody's particular account over a certain amount. And if banks don't do that, they can be penalized. So Prudential Bank and Societe Generale, how much monies were in that bank account? Was it over $1 million? Was it 500,000? Was it 1 CD? Was it 10 CD? And I don't think if it was 1 CD, 10 CD, the OSP would ask for what? The accounts to be withheld. And so it's either information at this point is held back till all the investigations are made, and then if it needs to go to court, it goes to court. I got plummeted yesterday on the on the TV station for indicating something I felt was important. The OSP indicated that, and I'm trying to download what he said. The OSP indicated that the monies that they found in her house, and he talked about the suspicion of it being out of corruption. He said that. And I asked the question, was Madame Cecilia Dapaah present when they searched the house? Because from what I know, if the regulators and the law has a warrant to search my house, and they look underneath my bed and they see $1 million there, and they see a gun there, the first question they would have to ask me if I'm present, what is this? Who owns it? Is it yours? If I can't give any answer to the questions that I asked, and because I'm probably a politically exposed person, the deduction would be, this is suspicious. But really, I didn't expect the OSP, in the statement that he sent, in the motion that he sent, it wasn't a motion, no, the documents that he sent, I didn't expect him to even mention the fact that it could have been from corrupt practices. You haven't been to court. You haven't heard both sides. So why do you make that judgment at that point? Yes, seize the money. Tell us you've seized the money. It is your right to seize the money and wait for the court processes. In prosecuting, in your case, you would put that forward, that the monies that were found in her house, so far as we're concerned, she couldn't explain how she got it, so it could be from corrupt practices. I got plummeted for saying that, but so far as I was concerned, you are innocent until proven guilty. And the court of public opinion, and the way the stories are being said, and the youth don't have work to do, and where does that affect this? The youth who don't have work to do, is up to the government to create the environment for jobs to be created. Because at this point, as we stand, we don't know how she got the money. Yes, there in some of the what do you call it that has come out, she was able to indicate 800,000 who it was for, 300,000 who it was for, but wasn't able to indicate $200,000 and 300,000 euros where that money was from. Leave it at that till it goes to court. For me, I want to wait for the court processes to start before, from the deduction of what comes out, I'll be able to say, yes, the woman is corrupt. No, the woman isn't corrupt. No, the woman got the money A, B, C, D. It should be checked how that money came about. So let me ask the question. What politician in Ghana today doesn't have money in their house? Tell me, what politician? And you see, the double standards here for me has got to do with the OSP. You're fighting corruption. Fine. It's your mandate to fight corruption. When we went to the two elections we had, where was it? Kumewu and Asin North. We had people say on the media, they brought the money. We took it. We took it. Shouldn't the OSP, shouldn't he have been there? Arrest those people. This is what you said on national TV, that they brought money to buy your votes. Arrest them. Why? Once you arrest them, you will show us the people the politicians who gave you the money, and then you go and arrest those politicians and question them where they got the money from to buy votes. Did they do that? Is that not double standards? If his duty is to make sure that corruption is staved out, shouldn't he have done that? Would it have been impossible for him to do? I don't think it would. For me,
right.
This is easy pickings. Yes, he should go out and investigate. But at the present moment, let's make sure we get all the information
right
before we start pointing fingers.
Very well. No, I'll come to you, madam. But as we wait on the court in delivering justice and ensuring fairness, one major conversation that has come up has to do with the passage of the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. And in as much as public officials are able to declare their asset, there's a clause in this bill, clause 7, which says it enjoins public officers not to submit false or misleading declarations or clarification. It also provides a punishment for breach of same. But there is the absence of a verification mechanism, which is a complete betrayal of the object of the bill. You have given us a backstory into all these things which people do not know about. And I believe so much that if there was this particular clause, which was probably amended, for us to verify the claims that, well, indeed, as the business is running, I mean, this will clearly save us a lot of time. Don't you agree that we have really dilly-dallied with passing this bill from 2019?
I will answer from three perspectives. The first one is that the Act 959, which is the OSP Act, the Special Prosecutor Act, actually gives him the mandate to, even upon suspicion of corruption and corruption-related activities, to go into the matter and then start investigation. So I think by him writing that he's going into the matter to start investigation is part of his mandate. But still, he's under the supervision of the Attorney General.
Certainly.
That's the first part. Then, secondly, I'll also say that the banking system, our banking system, I remember the Vice President had the book about the banking system. At the time he wrote it, he said about 80% of Ghanaians do not have a bank account. And I remember writing an article about banking the unbanked in Ghana. And, the position now is that because of mobile money, more Ghanaians have mobile accounts. But honestly, I think the banking culture and the savings culture is unfortunately very low amongst our populace. I always say that.
But this is a learned person. This is a public official.
I have not finished. That's one point. So the banks must be up and doing in sensitizing the majority of the population, including public office holders, to use the banks. Then secondly, there's also been some form of failure of the banking system to support deposits. There's a history started with the revolution days when 50 cedis had to be seized or changed or something, and people could not withdraw beyond a certain percentage. And then we came to this banking crisis, debt crisis. The banking sector is kind of one is lacking in getting majority of bankers to majority of the populace to be involved in banking, and two, there's some form of failure when it comes to the perspective of the banks vis-a-vis the relationship with the public. So the banks should also look at it. They should look at how to educate everyone from public servants to public office holders to the populace, to the grassroots, to the villages, to those with small income, medium income, and large businesses. We have to face the fact that we have a problem with our banks and how they relate with the populace. That's the second. Then the code of ethics is long overdue. It's long overdue because we should look at what pertains in the world. I remember I used to be a congressional fellow in the after my master's in the US, and I came to Ghana and bought a wooden craft. I can't remember how much it cost, but it wasn't that expensive, and I took it to my congresswoman. But the chief of as a gift, after one of my vacations. But I remember the chief of staff called me and interviewed me to find out the cost of the artifact because she's not supposed to receive, I think, gifts beyond $20. And that, yes, in the US. And that is the position. So we also need to have some regulations, maybe to even be in favor of our public office holders, that if they are not supposed to receive a gift of above a certain percentage, then they will also not be compelled to give gifts, because, you know, they are also burdened. Hospital bills, coffin bills, funeral bills, church harvest, marriage bills. I mean, to be a public office holder in Ghana from MP, I don't know your experience, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. I do agree.
So it would be in their favor to have the code of ethics, so that when people ask them for favors beyond they can tell them that, well, we are not expected to receive this gift beyond this amount, and so we also are limited when it comes to giving, because when they don't give, it becomes a whole issue. Oh, this man or this woman was wicked. She didn't help me when I was getting married to my second and third wife and all that. It's a whole issue out there.
There's gifts though. There's financial gift and there's actual
gift in kind.
Gift in kind.
We have to look at that.
I'm talking about financial gift.
I'm talking of the code of ethics.
Right, the conduct of public
it will be in favor
officers.
Of the public officers. So it's about time they looked at it.
However, there are a lot of loopholes in this bill we are talking about, because it doesn't have it even has a limited definition of who a public officer is.
Let's read it. Let's discuss
today. Gifts that are given.
Play that role.
Gifts that are given in office. Is it not supposed to be left when the public officer is leaving?
Don't forget that with the judiciary, I remember when Anas had his what do you call it? Expose. Somebody accepted a goat. Someone accepted yams, but it became a big issue. So I guess we have to look at that and fine-tune the public policy regarding these ethical giving and receiving.
Indeed. Fatima, your point.
What I wanted to add is that I don't know why the GRA or any of the institutions that are responsible to check whether or verify declared assets, even under the current regime, I don't know why they are handicapped based on the information that they receive from political office holders. For instance, if you ask for somebody's bank accounts and they give a list of bank accounts and the banks and then the account balances, of course you can write to their respective institutions to verify whether that is accurate or not. Subsequently, because of the way the banking system runs, said that if you take a loan from this bank and you don't pay, I'm told they have a way of flagging you so that all the other banks know what's on your record. I believe with such a system, even if you declare some of your accounts and fail to declare others, they should have certain features required to open accounts, said that they will be able to use the same credit reference that Nee is talking about to verify all those. But of course, some of the loopholes that have been identified within the space are, for instance, within the real estate sector. How do people purchase houses? If you are holding $200,000 today, you can walk to a real estate company and say, I'm coming to buy a 3-bedroom house. They'll take the money and give you receipts and wouldn't bother to find out where you got that money from. So in acquiring assets, yes, I can see the challenge. But when it comes to the cash bit, tracing how you are circulating money, I don't know why they should be handicapped, especially now that to open a bank account, you need your TIN, you need your Ghana card, you need certain information that will give them some your footprints all over the place.
Nick Papu, okay, right.
We shouldn't forget the fact that Madame Cecilia Rapah is a politically exposed person. There's assets declaration
Certainly.
So if you didn't put it in your declaration that this and this and this is what you owe, how then can you prove that these money?
So that is where the conduct of a public officers bill comes in, to be able to verify that indeed you can only say, but there's no mechanism that allows for verification, which we are failing.
Well, that is why what Madam was saying.
Right.
I want.
So we need that bill passed.
If we look at her asset declaration, are all the things she's saying in the asset declaration?
So nothing to verify that indeed. Indeed, and I believe the Auditor General is best placed to also verify these claims, but they haven't been given that mandate. So, Nick Papo, you are just about making your point, but okay, yeah, sure. So he's grabbing his constitution.
My constitution.
Yes, your constitution. So, Nick Papo, you were begging to make a point. So let's hear you out. We don't want to miss out on your submissions as well. So, your point, Nick Papo.
I was thinking that my sister would not even comment on this matter.
Your sister being, there are two sisters here. Who are you referring to?
Fatima.
Oh.
Fatima would not talk about this matter at all, because you see.
Why shouldn't she talk about this matter?
The Cecilia Dapa's matter.
Why shouldn't she have a say?
The government itself has not issued an official statement on this whole matter since it started.
She has resigned. Someone has been put into a position. How does it concern the government in this?
No.
The OSP has taken up investigations. So how is the government supposed to pull into this?
It is a matter. The allegations and the tenor of the debate that has taken place. You understand? And the fact that certain statements have been made, has clearly drawn a certain perception of public officers and the potential that, and of course, she in her situation, there's an allegation of money is being stolen. There's another government person who also suffered some theft in her house as a result of certain monies that she was keeping in her house. So there's a certain perception that why are we, the general public, being told to keep our monies in the bank? And a senior government minister had that amount of money in a house. You understand? So even on the face of that, you cannot say that the government, as a government body corporate, is not affected by that issue, and for which the government will not comment on it. So I'm telling you that the silence of government on this issue, not on just the fact that she has resigned, but the general silence of government on this issue is strategic. Do you understand?
Why is it strategic, Nick Papo? Especially when the court is yet to even make an opinion on it.
It is strategic because you are seeking to put a certain message across that due process is ongoing. Government agencies have been activated. Let them work. They won't comment about it. So whatever allegations are being thrown out there, the silence itself is communicating. But for me,
if you're in the government shoes, what would you say, Nick Papo?
Is that?
What would you say if you were in the shoes of the government? What do you expect the government to say?
But the government has to give us an assurance that when it tells us, when the Minister of Information...
The assurance came from the presidency when he was reappointing Freema into her office.
Please.
Also accepting her resignation. When he accepted her resignation, he says you allow investigations. No, I'm saying that when appointment of Freema came after the resignation of Cecilia Dapa.
I'm not talking...
Frida, sorry. Thanks for that correction. When Frida was being appointed into the office of the Sanitation Ministry, before the resignation came and the president acknowledged her acceptance of resignation, he said he will allow investigations to be carried through. So what else do you expect the government to do?
He didn't say he would allow investigations
to be
carried. He says that he is hoping, he hopes, and he's quite confident that she will be absolved. She will be absolved of any wrongdoing.
That indirectly side that investigation to be carried out.
It is not indirect. Please, the president speaks directly.
You understand?
What else do you want the government to say?
See, there's an allegation that the OSP as an office investigates allegations of corruption and corruption-related matters. Do you understand? So when the OSP thinks that it must necessarily, its jurisdiction has been invoked vis-a-vis a minister of state, you can't tell me that that is not a serious enough issue for the government to keep quiet over. You can't tell me that. That is, please, I'm saying that the government has decided not to communicate. You've decided not to communicate. So that's why the first thing I'm saying is that I am surprised that even though government has not officially commented.
You had an official of the government communicating, but you had a problem with it.
Oh, I'm saying
she's an official. She's a public official.
I'm saying that knowing how this case, okay, has different facets of it, I think that when you have adopted a position of no comment, do you understand? You should align that position and stay in that position. And that was just my opening statement. Now let me go on with my point. See, under Article 286, that's 284 deals with Code of Conduct for Public Officers. 286 states that 2864, any property or assets acquired by a public officer after the initial declaration, after you make the declaration under this article, which this declaration deals with the asset declaration with the Auditor General of this article, which is not reasonably attributable to income, gift, loans, inheritance, or any other reasonable source, shall be deemed to have been acquired in contravention of this Constitution. So there's a constitutional provision, okay, that literally forfeits those kinds of assets which you cannot give reasonable account for and which cannot be found in your public declaration form. You understand? What is the history of this particular matter? A young lady working for Cecilia Dapaah, who was below the age of 18 years, was arraigned before a circuit court. In the initial charge, okay, there was no charge of stealing. That was not the first charge that was leveled against this young lady. It was unlawful entry. Because at that time she was put before the juvenile court. Then, after 1 year, she's put before the court again on the charge of stealing, and alongside other people. You see?
Could there not have been a mistake in that?
No, there was no mistake. There was no mistake in that.
If you come and find somebody in your bedroom,
yes, you
can take them to.
It is when she was testifying. It was when she was testifying. It was when she was testifying in that court.
Right.
It was when she was testifying in that court that she brought up the issue of stealing for the first time. I'm saying that this story, it has many, many facets. All I will say is that as an officer of the court, I will not, in good conscience, say that I will judge her before the investigations are over. Because if you make comments that prejudge the matter, it becomes, it's difficult for me as an officer of the court to do that. And that is why I least expect that the political communicators of the NPP will be in a rush to try and delve into this matter. You see, because if you want to do the politics of it, you understand? If you want to do the politics of it and take out they want to do the politics of it, what were the amounts that were found in Madam Cecilia Dapaah's house? When she was interrogated or being interrogated by officers of the OSP, what did she say? What reasons did she give as being the source of the money? Those in government should have better ears than those of us who are outside government. But if you want to know whether she's in a precarious situation or whether she's giving logical answers or whether this issue about cosmetics and what have you, I'm saying that you have to find answers to these few questions. Number one, how much was taken from a house, and why was the OSP triggered by those seizures to look for more? Because if you read the OSP's application to the court, those were the triggers. That the amounts of monies found in a house. Yes, the general allegations were what would be the source of the monies that you are complaining have been stolen from your house. And please, let's also put on record that the husband has not complained to the police that his $1 million is missing. Go and look at the amended charge. Don't look at the original charge sheet. Go and look at the amended charge sheet. Look at who is the complainant when it comes to the specific amounts of money that are alleged to have been missing. I'm saying that. And that's why I say that. You have to be careful. You have to be careful. I'm asking questions. Those who have the better access to information. I'm saying I have not concluded.
So you are making a point on assets declaration, but you try to sway to the chart, then try to bring us back. Please stick to what you are saying.
I say something triggered the OSP. Okay. And when Madam Cecilia was interrogated, what answers did she provide in respect of the sources of the monies that were found in the house? Oh no, but there are questions. People say, don't you hear brothers' inheritance? Don't you hear brothers? What do you call it? Brothers' money.
Into your ownership. So at that particular moment, you own it.
I'm coming. I'm coming. I could that one.
You are still on your way, Nikwaku. Please land. Nikwaku, land.
People had 15 minutes.
No one had 15 minutes. No one had 15 minutes. No, we've made time for you.
Yes, so please. Questions are being asked as to what she said as being the justification for having those monies in the house. Who those monies allegedly belong to. You understand? Has she at any time, whilst being investigated, ever disclosed that those monies ever belonged to her business as a cosmetic person?
Well, not just cosmetic.
Hold on. I'm saying that. I'm saying that. So you should.
Can we allow Nikwaku to make his point?
Put your ears to the ground.
Nikwaku, carry on.
Put your ears to the ground.
Don't react to her comments. Just make your point.
I'm not reacting to her comments. I've heard this in the media.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying that all the things that are being said post her initial interrogation, I wish people would perhaps have or be able to get access to perhaps what it is that she initially has said were the sources of this income.
That doesn't hold water if it's not an asset declaration.
I'm coming. That is what I'm saying. I'm coming. That's what I'm saying. That
we don't have enough time.
I'm coming.
Please let's stop coming.
Yes, people see, if you are in government, this particular matter, I think that you should leave it alone and allow the OSP to carry it. You understand? In all political governments or in all governments.
But yet you want the government to respond to it.
Hold on. I never know. Listen. I said that the government has taken a position not to react to this issue. And also when I was going to make my initial submissions, but for the fact that Fatima had decided to talk about trying to bring in issue of gender and those things, I was going to say, look, let the OSP run. Because am I going to do
she was only raising
citing
sexism. Sexism is outside the law. Sexism is outside the law and the main conversation context. It's outside the law. She was just raising
she made a point. She said that based on the history, based on the employment
she was just
history.
Citing sexism.
She said based on the employment history of Madam Cecilia Dapaah, she is more than capable of owning the money in there.
Linking it to sexism.
No. Did she make the categorical statement that based on the employment history of Madam Cecilia Dapaah, she has more than enough capacity to own the money? Did she say that?
No, but
The conversation stemmed from what Madam Gloria Ofori-Brady said.
Did she say that or not?
She said it based on what Gloria Ofori-Brady said.
Ask her what she based on. It's not about what it's based on. Did she make the statement or not?
Exactly. Based on a preliminary comment someone made.
Hold on. She said it is not beyond her. So when she says it's not beyond her, then she says it's not beyond her. We also have a responsibility. You understand? To show certain portions of the law and facts.
Hold on there. Let me allow Fatima to make her remarks.
Yes. Oh, I haven't finished my point.
I'll come back. I just wanted to make her defense, then you come in.
No, hold on. I asked a simple question whether she had made that point. She said she had made that.
Let her make it. Let her defend and say whether she did.
You were asking a question about how the media and the public reaction has been around the issue. And I pointed out something that I have observed, which has to do with the element of gender. And I made a comparison that there are other political figures in the country, or public figures, or even private figures, who could have mentioned that they have lost this amount, and it will not be a surprise to anybody. I see the element of gender bias in the conversation somehow,
and I'm telling
you how the public discourse in general has been. Looking at her age, her work history, and that is exactly
I'm saying that.
What I said.
That
is the context based on the conversation that has been within the space.
And I'm saying
I didn't go into the merits of the what's contained in the charge sheets and the amended charge sheets. No, I didn't.
Nipapo, your point.
And it is, and I'm saying that when you try to justify something, you understand, you also then call for alternate facts, you understand, to be able to also put the conversation in proper perspective. And I'm saying that in this particular matter, okay, it is best, all right, if we allow the OSP, okay, and all other agencies to progress. And in politics, you must sacrifice one or two people. This is one issue that you should allow the person to go with all her troubles, you understand, and leave the government a little clean. Because when you want to try and justify what, in my opinion, cannot be justified, you open the government up for questions. For example, why should a senior minister be keeping that amount of money in a house? Let's just put anything aside. You are a government that tells all of us to put money in a bank. The first question I want to ask is, why is the minister and government officials keeping those amounts of money in their houses? If you want to tell us to do the right thing by keeping our monies in the bank and encouraging us to keep monies in the bank, why have two senior government officials have monies like that in their houses? Why?
Let's look at our history. I think there's a failure of banking culture in the banking system. You remember the case of the former Attorney General Obeda Sama? Remember? Oh, yes. And not only him, there have been others. We don't want to mention it. So I think it's a culture.
It is not a culture, madam.
No,
it is about the fact that they say one thing and do another thing.
Oh, irrespective of governments, we've had that culture in our political history where key public officers, irrespective of parties, like the former Attorney General, had his maid stealing his money. He filed bodyguards. Thanks for the correction. No better. He filed honorable. He filed a complaint, and I think later he didn't show up, and so the case.
No, they tried the matter.
Oh, they did, yes, and then what happened?
Wasn't
the complainant? Did he ever show up?
He showed up.
Was there? Did they? What do you call
it? At some point, so there was this. It became as to whether money belonging to a political party even was public money. It was deemed to be public money, but the prosecution itself terminated at a point.
Okay,
the prosecution itself terminated at a point.
Right. Yes. So we've had that history. That's why I said let's look at the larger picture. Irrespective of the party official,
it is the politics.
Irrespective of NDC or MP.
Yes.
But we've had that problem. So let's look at the banking sector. The banks have to reach out to the public, including public officers.
Fatima.
You know, let me just refer you to this issue. The former president, J.J. Rawlings, of blessed memory. One day, may his soul rest in perfect peace. One day, the former president informed Ghanaians that a deputy minister under the NDC, a young man, was able to carry $3 million to a real estate a property owner who is his friend, the former president and founder of the NDC. Listen,
and went to buy 2 buildings cash. They didn't find anything wrong with that. The NDC didn't find. I'm coming to another issue. Just recently, during the NDC's primaries, just their presidential primaries, a delegate at Adenta on TV said nationwide, the whole country, the former President Mahama has given money to agents to give everybody 40 Ghana cedis. We are talking about over how many delegates? Hundreds of thousands of delegates.
About 270,000. So
yes. No.
Let her allow her to make her point. Allow her to make her point.
And of course, there was a. Okay, so you see, it comes back to our conversation that we had.
Fatima, please land.
If you think, okay, that it is okay that someone who has served the public publicly can own 40,000 times 250 or times 300,000, if a deputy minister and the NDC can own 2 bags of money containing $3 million and you didn't have any problem with it, you are now talking about a case that the OSP is prosecuting. After 1, the woman made her own complaint. 2, the woman had resigned. Listen, no, it's not as if the OSP initiated the investigation process before all these facts. It is after this case gained some publicity or notoriety, and also it became an issue of public interest that we heard the OSP has stepped in to investigate. So this shouldn't make it appear as if, we shouldn't go into the politics of it. And the fact that there's been allegation and we haven't exhausted the entire case, we haven't seen all the responses that the woman and her family are willing and able to provide, and conclude as if she cannot justify, she cannot account for anything that they have seen, and as if the NDC, the OSP has given them some back. You know, they are talking as if there's been some whispering, and they know the initial interrogation or interview between the OSP and Honorable Cecilia Dapaah, because that is the tangent that they are always going. If you know the conversation that they had with her and some of the figures and sources that she quoted, we don't know that. I don't know that.
Right.
The investigation is still ongoing. So if you are calling on us to be patient for the investigation to conclude, don't be speculative and talk as if the OSP has whispered into your ears that this is what the woman mentioned, and now the figures that you are hearing in the public domain are contradictory, and it is because of that initial interview we know what is happening behind the scenes that this issue is going the direction that is going.
Anyway, let me read some comments on Facebook, and on Facebook, who people are doing the streaming. Someone is asking me, so what is Nee saying? He indicts subtly and at the same time tries to sound objective. It's the classic case of selective indignation. Well, so that is to Nee. So again on Facebook, Abdul Basit Mahama says, do we really want to know what people keep in their homes? The history of the use of votes at home is as old as Adam. Many who shout, hang him, have converted cash into immovable assets with disguised ownership, and they know it. We'll jump out of our skins if the OSP were to audit all bank accounts using AI. Audi Samuel says the opposition NDC communication teams are trying to sacrifice Honorable Cecilia Dapaah to their political advantage. The crucial crucifixion of her is overemphasized. Most of their ex-ministers have more than hers in their cubicles. They need to cease from such barbaric politicking and deal with the substantial matters that will help the average Ghanaian. Again, Anaya Mensah on Facebook says, thank you for opening up this argument. It is not a sin to be a woman. It is not a sin to be wealthy. It is not a sin to be a wealthy woman. So these are comments on Facebook. And Samuel Ofosuban says, the opposition NDC communication teams are trying to sacrifice. I've already read that. So yeah, these are comments I've already gone through. Thank you for joining on social media. If you are doing the listening elsewhere, Asase 99.5 across Asase Kumasi, Asase Cape Coast, and Asase Tamale. And let's move on to our final topic. It has to do with ECOWAS. It's it directly affects us, indirectly affects us, because just this week the price of onions were being thought to have shot up. There were some onion trucks that were also stuck at a border. So yes, it does affect us largely. So Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, chair of West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS, said on Thursday at the close of a summit on the coup in Niger that, and I quote, no option had been taken off the table, unquote, including the use of force as a last resort. The summit took place as Niger's coup leaders announced they had formed a new government. So let's just try to wrap up this conversation and say that let's limit the conversation this way. Now, to understand the root causes of coup, I believe it's important to discuss Niger's political landscape. What were the grievances or circumstances that led to this coup, and how does it fit into the broader context of political instability in the region? Let me begin with you, Jantua. Clearly, we know that the issue of coup in the West African sub-region is not new. It's not novel at all. And most people are thinking it's getting out of hand. Most people think that ECOWAS as an institution has failed because they wait for the damage to be done, then they try to intervene. The old saying that prevention is better than cure would have fit into the right perspective of ECOWAS, where you try to limit and try to go into countries where leaders are trying to amend the constitution to fit them, for them to overstay their tenure. Would you say that, let's look at ECOWAS before we go into the submissions made by the chairman of ECOWAS looking to deploy military to intervene as a last resort. ECOWAS as an institution, Kwame Jantua, and the conversations have gone on as to how they have failed. The latest incident in Niger, would you say that they directly failed in trying to address it from the onset when they had wind of the situation where President Bazoum had overstayed his welcome in tenure?
I'm not trying to get your question.
I am asking
that they should have acted quicker.
Exactly, quicker. Rather than wait for it to have gotten out of hand for military to take over the country.
It depends on the kind of action that they should have taken. Look, the major challenge with regards to the coups that we're seeing in French West African countries has got to do with France. That's where the major issue is. And I would have felt that ECOWAS and AU would have helped the French African countries in West Africa to handle that situation with France, where substantial amounts of money need to be put in the French banks. And even when they want their money, the French treasury has to give them the authority. The way France has handled their French colonies in West African countries in West Africa is abysmal. It's abysmal. And remember, Niger has a commodity that the West want.
The uranium?
Yes. And for me, because of lack of time, let me get into the conclusions of the ECOWAS meeting.
Bola Tinubu's comments, yes.
If we are not careful and we open that door, first of all, there are mercenaries in that area. 2, you now give the chance. Didn't we hear the Wagner Group wanting to come in there?
Russia.
You now give the chance for foreign mercenaries to get in. Because look, the West, they have personal interest and no personal friends. It really doesn't bother them if West Africa becomes it destabilizes. Doesn't bother them.
The West, I think we should be specific. It's only Russia who is trying to take advantage, but the U.S. has backed ECOWAS claims to use diplomacy.
You trust the U.S. You trust the U.S., don't you?
If it's backing them,
you trust the U.S.
If it's backing them,
you think the U.S. are backing them because of Africans? Do you think the U.S., any other European country, are backing them because of Africans? They're backing them because of what they can get out of Africa and the way they are handling Africa today. And look, the finger should be pointed at our leaders. That is where the finger should be pointed at.
By our leaders, ECOWAS could have put our leaders in the right position if they have acted when these leaders were trying to overstay their welcome.
Who make up ECOWAS?
certain West African regional leaders. So they could have a huge role to play by getting into these countries.
Look. Let's stop this old school mentality. Let's stop this old school mentality. 1966 coup. President Nkrumah was going where? To discuss peace in Vietnam. The irony of it was to discuss peace in Vietnam. Behind his own backyard, they were what? Overthrowing him. That coup has had a huge impact on Ghana, on West Africa, and Africa in general. So coups aren't good things. However, if I'm being depressed and my natural resources are being taken free all the time, and my country is in poverty, what do you expect me to do? Don't we find Nigerians and Burkina Faso on the streets of Ghana begging? Don't we find it? Whose responsibility is it? It's up to ECOWAS leaders to make sure that this stops. Have we been able to develop ECOWAS? Tinubu is saying what?
So are you saying the institution has failed?
Tinubu is saying what?
He's saying that their last resort will be
it
the
should
deployment.
not be a last resort. The last resort should be negotiation as much as possible. I would have expected at this point that Burkina, Mali, and Niger, those coup makers, they should be sitting around the table and talking to them. Have ECOWAS been able to tell us what the reasons are for the coup? Have they been able to tell us? Have they been able to say ABCDE?
Well, time is fast spent, Kwame Jantua, madam.
I've been to Niger. I went there for a gender training program. Honestly, at the time, it was ruled by the military. And when I went there, the hotel that I stayed was owned by a military man. The electricity was bad. I mean, it was a horrible experience. I couldn't even go out to town because the place looked so dry and miserable and poor. Even their airports, okay? So I've always had my perspective on Niger. Now, if they went into a democratic elected government, a period of democratic elections, and now the military are coming back, then it's about time that the population are given some form of information by civil society organizations as to the damage that the military has done in our respective countries over the years, and the fact that they have no future with the military. So I'm glad that apart from the ECOWAS resolutions, the emir of I think some eminent Muslim clerics and some emirs are going into negotiation and some form of dispute resolution with the Nigerians because they speak Hausa and they have equal support. It's about time we as civil societies have been very active in CS. Come up with some form of research findings and let them know from my experience in Ghana and other countries that the military does no good to us. Even in Niger, when I went there, I couldn't go out. I mean, the place was horrible. I have to be honest with you. Now, secondly, there's the issue of international trade in guns. When you take drug trafficking, human trafficking, I think the third business is guns. Remember that war is business. The people who make guns want to sell their guns. Those who make planes want to sell their war planes, their whatever, all the equipment of war are waiting on the shelves to be sold. Do we want that gun running business to occur in our sub-region? Don't forget that Niger is bordered by 7 African countries. Do we want refugees coming in? Well, we have them here already, but do we want more? You know, every Nigerian, most of the business people would like to come to Kumasi and work for a while and go back and all that. They have very good human resources. When I went there, I met one of the best interpreters I've met at a conference. His interpretation was fantastic, but the area is so poor. And at that time, it was under military rule. Can we look at the democratic elected government and how we can all support each other to ensure that democracy wins? Because the military have never done us any good. And we should avoid the gun business. The gun business is dangerous.
Well, let me come to you, Fatima.
The other side of the coin is that when we get the democratic governments in, they should do right by the people.
We should
and
learn
it's because they don't do right by the people.
We should learn how to.
Not to come in, but because when he was ousted, the citizens were jubilating. And that says a lot anyway. Let's come to you.
Okay, let me come to that. You know, I think my generation and those behind us, we didn't see a lot of coup in Ghana. So when we hear of coup d'etat and military regimes across our sub-region, we glamorize it and say I wish we had a whole hour to discuss this particular issue.
But let me give you some facts. I have been to Niger a couple of times. In fact, the last time I went to Niger was September last year. The problem in Niger, the current conflict, is not even really about the France and whatever and the new powers trading. They are just from one bully to another. Whichever country they are hosting the flags now, are they giving them money? It's the guns and ammunition that they are bringing to you to kill each other. But let's say this fact. President Bazoum has only been in office for 2 years. He is not like a dictator who has overstayed his welcome.
Exactly.
And if you knew Niger of yesterday and the Niger that I saw a few months ago, you will know that democracy is good for Africa.
Yes.
Why am I saying this? Currently, Niger has the biggest convention center in the whole of West Africa. The Mahatma Gandhi Convention Center. Even Nigeria doesn't have it. Ghana doesn't have it. And in recent years, most of the UNESCO conferences, a lot of international conferences happen in Niger, in Niamey. It has pushed them to also set up 5-star hotels, about 3 or so, just to accommodate the new demand. I stayed at the Bravia Hotel just the last time that I went there, just to accommodate the number of tourists that were now coming into the country. But their problem remain ethnic and tribal differences, and the fact that the current president was elected from a minority tribe, and people were like, this is not likely to work, this cannot work. And it is so sad that there was an array of hope going into Niger recently, Niamey in particular recently, and seeing that, oh, now they are opening new restaurants, things are changing, they are putting some modern infrastructure to meet the current tourist and business tourism demand that was happening in the country. But their problem is that outside Niamey, you cannot travel beyond 50 kilometers. They can't go to the farms. All the 8 regions, let me say the commercial ones that are quite active are Niamey and Agadez. But that one you have to go by air. The other regions are almost not accessible. You can't go anywhere because of ethnic conflicts and some of these small issues that they were having there. So if anyone, including the military in Niamey, if they had support for the country, was to work so hard towards removing some of these terrorists and insurgents so that the people can really do business and the people can work and move about freely.
Very well.
But if someone came into office for just 2 years, for whatever reason you have, and think that we have to remove the person, compare it to the same period that Kedal Goita took over Mali, the same period that they've had military rule in Guinea, the same period that Burkina Faso has been under 2 coups d'etats. Within that 2-year period, what significant improvement or development have these military leaders brought to their respective countries?
Right. So let me.
I'm saying that no.
Make a point.
I'm saying that first of all, the situation with the coup is bad. Niger didn't need a coup. As we speak, Nigeria has scarce gas supply.
Yeah.
They don't have
All form of
electricity.
facilities.
The tourism is gone. The business is gone. The people are the ones who are suffering. There should be intervention. As to whether that is dialogue or military, government position will be known in due course, because I know something is on the
And its position is all options are on the table.
So my point is that we shouldn't glamorize coup d'etats
okay.
for whatever reason. I will choose an opposition party over having a coup d'etat in Ghana.
Very well. Nikwapo, just a minute of your point. Just a minute, Nikwapo.
My point is that President Nana has not addressed the people of Ghana on the Guinea issue. Sorry, on the
Niger
issue. I've seen the Kenyan president address his country on the issue. He has not addressed us on the issue. He has not addressed Parliament on the issue. He has not told Parliament on what authority or mandate he is going out there committing Ghana to some form of or possible military intervention in the Republic of Niger. The people's representatives are Parliament. We need to be informed as to what Ghana's position is when it comes to this issue. We need to know what potentially will be involved if we are to be committed to any form of standby military force. The cost, because as we speak, we are under IMF program. We don't have money, and we cannot risk our troops being involved in somebody else's war. So please, our president, come back home, come and address us and tell us what it is you are going around committing yourself to.
In fact, there is, I know for a fact that there is a necessary preparation in place for such information to be communicated to the public in due course. But as you mentioned, this has to do with a lot of obligations, so it is not a decision or communication that has to come out in haste.
But they had the first summit, then they had the second summit.
It shouldn't come in haste.
What has
so
happened?
we have to weigh all the options, and then government and all the experts and advisors will come to a point where we know it.
We've exceeded our time, but that's how we wrap up on today's edition of the Forum. And we've had wonderful guests in our studios this morning. We've had Kwame Jantua, who is a member of CPP and private lawyer, Nick Papo Samuadu, member of NDC and private lawyer, Fatima Abubakar, Deputy Minister of Information, Gloria Ofori-Buedu, who is the managing legal practitioner, GOB Law Consult. This is Asase 99.5 Accra, and we have transmitted across our outlets in other regions, Asase Kumasi, Asase Cape Coast, Asase Tamale, and our affiliate region. Do join us again same time next week to bring you some wonderful discussions, very complex topics that will make easy for your listening. Do enjoy those of our programs.